Hello, and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I am excited, like extra excited for these guests because they are my dietitians. I'm so happy to finally have a team of RDs to help you. So now we can reach more people. You've heard me talk about them before, but they're actually here for you to officially, virtually meet. And I'm super excited to have them here. So Mary Rose and Casey, welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, you guys.
I'm so excited to have them. So basically what we're going to do today is I'm going to have them introduce themselves in a second, but then we're going to really talk about kind of like the most common questions that we get asked and obviously our answers to them. And I just thought it'd be a great way for you guys to kind of hear the way that we view nutrition, the way that we view food, the way we view healthy living, and how we answer these questions that are super, super common that you are probably thinking yourself. But before we do that, I want to have you guys introduce yourself. We'll just go like I always like, I don't want, they're both amazing. I don't pick favorites, but we'll just start. Let's start with Mary Rose. Mary Rose, why don't you just introduce yourself by sharing who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do, specifically why you became a registered dietitian.
Okay, so my name's Mary Rose Eagle. I've been a dietitian for over 10 years. I love what I do. I say it all the time. I was a retail dietitian for many years, and now I get to work with Tony, which to me is awesome because we worked together in our previous lives. And I became a dietitian because I was working in an interior decorating company, and 9/11 happened. A lot of the families that were involved were doing projects with us, and they had to end them. So I was going about like canceling projects and actually having issues with firms not understanding, this family went through a horrible event. And as I was doing that, I came to the realization that I was not helping anyone, and that really started to affect me going, I don't want to shuffle papers. I want to be able to help people. So then I decided to go back to school, and I always had an interest in nutrition. And that also, there's another issue that my dad was going through all these things. So I said, Dad, give me the medications. He didn't know what to eat. So I said, give me all your medications. Let me figure it out. I wasn't a dietitian at the time. So I started going through and what I realized, like, okay, Dad, you can drink water safely. That's about it. You cannot take anything else. So I sent him to a dietitian, and she had such a major impact on his life, completely changed it for him. He understood what he needed to do, and it made a difference in his nutrition. From that point, I realized, this is what I want to do. I want to impact people's futures and make them healthy. And that to me is the most fantastic thing. It's extremely rewarding. I love what I do because people, lives get touched. And it's not that I do them for them, I empower them, and they have it in themselves. People have it in themselves to change. And I just give them the tools and stand by them and be their cheerleader and guide them. And it's so rewarding. And I know I sound extremely exuberant, but that's how I feel. I just love what I do. I love my profession.
Yeah, it's so awesome though. But guys, if you haven't noticed, I picked Mary Rose and Casey for their passion. Casey's going to talk next and you're going to hear it. It's just, and we are just excited. We we genuinely love what we do. We take pride in our work because we really are making a difference in people's lives. And I think that was so brave of you, Mary Rose, for, going back to school after you thought you had the career path to really, realize that it's about making impact. That's why we're here, right? And it's super cool when you can make impact and also make a living doing what you love. It's just incredible. So I'm so excited that you made that shift. I want to give Mary Rose a shout out. So she had mentioned we worked in retail together. I've talked about this before, I think, on another podcast. We worked for a supermarket. It was a super cool job. Absolutely loved it. We had this opportunity where we weren't doing it to do like this wasn't the intention, but we had to we were just raising money to feed the hungry. And we were both recognized in the same year at the same time to get on the back of a Cheerios box temporarily. And I know that sounds crazy, but I have the proof. If you guys don't believe me, message me on Instagram at @tips_with_Tony with an I. I will show you the picture. Me and Mary Rose are next to each other in the heart of a Cheerio box. It was like a limited edition, super cool. And I just remembering then, I always knew that, I loved you and respected you as the passionate RD that you were, but that was just so obvious. I think we were just talking about this before offline. In the whole history of ShopRite putting people on Cheerios boxes, which is a super cool thing that they do, by the way, that supermarket. We were 3 RDs in the whole history, right? Is that true?
Yes, that is true. The third dietitian was on the box at the same time we were, and that was it.
It's cool that I think even too, that dietitians are starting to get more recognized, so it's also why we probably moved to retail, because I don't know, did you ever do clinical before when you were a registered dietitian before you did retail, or did you go straight to retail?
I did private practice.
Okay, awesome.
I did private practice, and I was going to work at a part-time as clinical, but then the ShopRite job had come up, and I just was like, that worked for me at that time.
Yeah, no, well, you're lucky because you've listened, the value of people do not value dietitians in clinical. Let me tell you, it was really hard. I was so tired of just doing all of this work and not being any recognized for it. You definitely can't say that in other spaces. So that's awesome. Oh, well, thank you for sharing, Casey. So before Casey introduces herself, I want you guys to know that first of all, these 2 RDs are literally the cream of the crop, because when I put out this application, I was not expecting, I had 100 and later I checked, because I think people were still applying even after the deadline, 117 applications in a matter of a week, and of really qualified applicants. It was really hard. I've never been on the hiring end before. It was really hard, but Casey made it really easy for me, because out of those 117 applicants, only one of them, which was Casey, wrote out a cover letter. Everyone else put a resume and filled out the application. She wrote out a cover letter. Then when she got the interview, which was one of 5 people got the chance to interview with me, she sent me a portfolio with the coolest videos ever of literal proof of her work, talking about emotional eating, showing people how to make, a simple one pot meal, so incredible. And it was just so refreshing, and it was so clear and obvious that she was meant to be on this team. It was a literal no-brainer between the 2 of you. So anyways, I just needed to share that. So Casey,
I'm going to start calling you every morning and just, hey, Tony, can you tell me something about myself?
Well, I hope it's reciprocal, because I definitely need a hype girl, and I feel like you guys can do that for me too.
Absolutely.
So Casey, introduce yourself, share who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do, aka why did you become a registered dietitian?
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Casey, and I am so excited to be on this team. I mean, really, it felt like I was finding a job that was built just for me. And so thankful to be here, so excited to be here. I really got into nutrition when I was in high school. So growing up, I'm the daughter of a chef, always making the most delicious meals that I never ate, because I actually didn't eat a single fruit or vegetable as a child. And then when I was probably 16 or 17, I had a coach pull me aside and tell me that I had gained too much weight to be on her varsity team, and that my vertical wasn't what it should be. And so that kind of sent me into this horrible spiral of, I would go to the 2-a-day workouts, and then I would jog in the Texas heat, and I was eating extremely low calories. And then of course I would binge on the weekends, eventually got into a horrible binge purge cycle, and it just wasn't healthy. And I'm so fortunate that I had an incredible community and faith that kind of pulled me out of that cycle before it got really bad. But I knew instantly that that isn't not what I wanted. So I actually stopped playing volleyball in the middle of a season, which is if anybody does sports, that's very
That's a
frowned
pretty big
upon.
deal. Yeah.
Very frowned upon. But I had another dear coach that kind of helped me see that I was important and my health was important. And so I met with a nutritionist at the time, and she just got me eating vegetables. It was very simple. And it kind of became this fun journey. Of course, I had this incredible chef in my house. So how lucky and fortunate was I that it made that really easy. But when I first started out in my nutrition career, it really kind of became a huge identity for me. It was everything I ate had to be perfectly clean, perfectly healthy. I kind of did a complete 180 for my diet, which certainly served its purpose, and I'm thankful for. But as we all know now today, that the perfect diet doesn't exist, and that there's really not health in that perfection either. And so it's been really fun for me as I've gone on in my career and in my education to understand the privilege that led me to that place, to understand the deeper knowledge of what makes food, and really getting to appreciate and understand the community aspects of food, the mental health aspects of food. So I am now super passionate about helping people find freedom from that same restrictive place that I was in, and also enjoy food, right? And figuring out how food can be healthy and also really delicious, and also part of shared community experiences is something that, just like Mary Rose, I consider it just the greatest honor. It's such a privilege for me to be able to help people do this. And just like Mary Rose said, it's so humbling to realize that it's not me. I'm not doing this for my clients. They are doing it. It's just, right. It feels like I just get to walk alongside them and say, see, I told you this is who you were. And I'm going to get emotional talking about it, because I love what we do. And I'm really happy to be here with you guys.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. That definitely wasn't easy to first of all, I hope that there's no coaches like they're out there anymore that would criticize a teenager's body size and tell them that that was the reason behind their, weak performance, because that just it's just so socially unacceptable. Like, I just can't even deal, because unfortunately that stays with us for so long, but I'm proud of you for, if you need to hear this, if your teenage self needs to hear this, I am proud of you for, making that switch and leaving when it clearly wasn't serving you. That sounds like it would have been a very toxic place to stay in,
Yeah.
And, now it's leads us to our career, right? I got into nutrition.
It's worth it.
It's worth it. Although it's not excused that coach, I hope you're listening. Not excused.
I always wonder.
Yeah. It's crazy.
May I say something about Tony? Because,
about me?
Kudos. Yes.
Okay.
When Tony, so all your listeners, I know they already know that you're fantastic. But when I first met you and started to work with you, there is always an it, like the it girl, like, they have it. It's a personality, it's a drive. They just have it. And you have that, and you had it, and I knew it, and I recognized it from the beginning. And I also knew before you even said it, when you outgrew your position and you needed to go bigger, like there was no doubt, when you did tips with Tony, I was like, yes, I could see her doing that. Go. I was so proud of you, because I've seen you grow, and you're just amazing, and you're an it girl. And that's why you have Casey on board, because she's an it girl too.
Oh, and you're an it girl too. Yes, oh my God.
Definitely are. You just see it. And I just want to shout you out that, your listeners, your clients are all very blessed to have you.
Thank you so much.
Too.
Oh, that makes me very happy. Thank you so much. I'm very excited for us, guys. Mark this, if you're listening to this, mark this as like the start to something huge, because that is where we're going. Just so you guys know, that is a vision. If life, my life might get in the way, but that is where we're going. So I'm super excited. Thank you so much. All right. So now let's get into the meat of the questions that we get asked. And I think the number one question, Casey, you had mentioned before we even started recording, which I thought was a good place to start, is like, is this healthy? Like, insert food item here, insert whatever, like, is this healthy? How do you typically respond to that when someone asks you if something's healthy?
So the frustrating response, honestly, to most questions I get asked is it depends. And I kind of touched on this a little bit in my story, but I think what makes a food healthy is so complex. It's not just about the nutritional components of the food. A good example I have for this is sometimes the healthiest thing you can do would be to sit down and have ice cream with your kid or your partner, because food is so intertwined with not just how our bodies are physically, but also mental health and emotional health. And so I think that if something is healthy or not depends on a lot of factors, right? When I first discovered nutrition and got into this habit of, even though I was eating plenty of calories, I was so obsessive over what I was eating. I didn't like going to restaurants because I didn't know what would be in the food. I was having vegetables for dinner, pretty much just vegetables all the time. That's, even though that was nutritionally very healthy, probably nutritionally the healthiest I'll ever be, that was not healthy for me emotionally or mentally. And so I think it's important to be honest with yourself and kind of remove a lot of the labels you have around food to assess, is this healthy for me right now? You have to be willing to be honest with yourself and say, okay, am I eating this ice cream because this is what I really want? I'm craving it. I'm sharing an experience with someone or with myself. Or am I eating it because I feel really lonely and I don't want to feel that, right? So there's so many different things that can make a food healthy or unhealthy. And I think that it's really up to an individual to set that for themselves. Now, that's hard to do. And that's where I think working with a coach comes in, is because being honest with yourself is never easy, especially if your viewpoint of food and nutrition has been clouded by diet culture. It's such a hard thing to wade through.
Such a good point. Such a good point. So where would you suggest somebody would begin? Well, you maybe say they're not working with a coach, although I would love for everyone to apply to work with us. And I think that would be amazing. And I hope that would happen. Where would someone begin in their journey of trying to explore, what healthy means to them? I know you kind of explained it, but is there any more like tactical tips you might give somebody?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say when you're defining healthy, there's two different distinct aspects of it: the emotional side and then the more kind of fundamental side, right? We can't ignore the fundamentals of nutrition, but I actually recommend starting with the emotional side. So picking up a book like the Intuitive Eating Workbook, or even following accounts like Tony on Instagram that are more nutritionally minded, but also food positive. Heal that relationship with food first. Meet with a therapist. Maybe a registered dietitian isn't for you right now, but find a therapist. Find so many of the published books that are out there, and have your blinders ready, because diet culture will come for you and it will try to cloud that again. So I would say heal that relationship with food. And then when it comes to the logistical side of nutrition, you don't have to overcomplicate it. You don't have to worry about, I think Mary Rose was talking about phytates yesterday. You don't have to worry about specific vitamins and minerals, but maybe just focus on making half of your plate vegetables. Maybe focus on making sure you're getting enough carbohydrates, that you aren't restricting yourself from that standpoint. So I would say feel encouraged to separate those two things. Okay, I'm working on my emotional relationship with food right now, but then I can't wait to get back to the fundamental side of what makes food healthy as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good tip, because so many people want to go quick to, and I think that's the issue, right? Is they so badly want to, like, the weight loss is like their top of mind. And so they feel like they don't have the time to heal their relationship with food. They need to just drop the weight, or they need to just change their nutrition, but they keep forgetting that they're missing the foundational step, right? Like if you don't have a house built on a solid foundation, that house is going to fall down. So I agree with you. I think that's incredible and such great advice. Is like, you have to work on your relationship with food first before you can really have that long-term sustainable change, because people are quote unquote successful, right? They lose weight, but how many, majority of people gain it back? And I'm not just saying weight loss is not the only way to be successful, but that's just an example.
Right.
So I think that's a really good point.
Right.
So Mary Rose, what's the number one question you get asked?
It's always, how do I pick whole wheat bread?
Really? That's such an interesting one. So what do you say to them?
I really tell them, and from working in the supermarket, there are so many different breads, and they're all shouting out on that label that they're whole grains and multigrains, and they're telling us, but the proof is in the pudding to say, and it's in the ingredient label. That first ingredient should say whole wheat flour or whole grain flour. If it says enriched, that means that it's been stripped and they had to put vitamins back in. But they put caramel coloring in bread to make it look hearty. We have an association with brown bread that we believe it's hearty. So I always get that question a lot about, picking a good bread. Like, what's a good bread? People love bread. Let's get real.
Yeah. Well, but
I love bread.
I love bread too. And I think that's the other thing too, when people think of getting healthy, like that's why I was a little bit surprised that was your question. Cause I think when people think of getting healthy, they actually think of not eating any bread. Right. So I love that people are even asking you, like, what's the better bread, or how do I choose? I hear whole grain or whole wheat bread is good for me, but how do I choose? Which is so complicated and overwhelming, because if you look at the bread aisle in our supermarket, it's equally as long as the cereal aisle. Like, how do you choose, right? And so I think it goes back to even like Casey's question. It's like, it becomes easier for you to decide what to eat when I define what healthy means to you. And so although nutrition wise, there might be like the quote unquote, like perfect bread, if you don't even like the taste of it, if you like that, they're like, then that might not be the best bread for you, right?
But to bounce off what Casey was saying about defining healthy, I always feel that food is so personal. Every single piece of food has a relationship, and it always goes back to the past. And sometimes I'll talk to a client and say, well, how was your dinner table as a kid? And a lot is revealed then. I had one client who had a very difficult relationship with food. And the reason is that her little brother and her would sit at the table, and her little brother wouldn't finish his food. And the father would yell at them and yell and make him eat the food. And she would get so stressed, she would eat his food. So that set up a pattern of, putting food and stress together for her. So she had to go through a therapist and really work that out. And I worked with her on my end. But it always goes back to, what is our relationship with food, and what went on through the years that formed those relationships.
Yeah. That's powerful. I don't think a lot of people want to go back.
Right.
They don't want to, but when you do, you will uncover a lot. And I would say probably 95% of this is not a real statistic. I'm just saying, I just think the majority of people, like, their relationship with food stemmed from their childhood.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's really rare that people, I'm sure it happens, but I feel like it's really rare that people develop like disordered eating or eating disorder like later in life. And even so, it's probably still something that like happened in their childhood that got triggered, so.
How many parents, said, here, you had a tough day, here's some milk and cookies. Right. I have an Italian friend whose mother would give them fresh Italian bread and butter. Not that that's a bad thing.
It sounds amazing.
I'm like, can she come to my house?
It sounds amazing. Well, as we were talking before we even started recording, I was just kind of sharing how someone had asked me about like the best gluten-free bread. And so going back to defining what's healthy, it was important for me to get to figure out if she was asking that because she thought gluten-free bread was healthy, or if there was like a reason. She did have a reason behind it. And so I think that's another thing too, is when we're, figuring out, what works best for us, we have to also take into consideration things like allergies, sensitivities, intolerances. And that can get kind of complicated if you have an unhealthy relationship with food, because now you're told that you need to limit, gluten per se, and you already have a history of restricting carbohydrates, and now you're even restricting more. It can get really complicated. Do any of you have any experience working with someone who is maybe instructed to limit had an allergy or an intolerance, and now it kind of complicated things even further?
Well,
Sorry, it was the challenge when you record virtually, and I just ask an open-ended question.
I know you threw it out there. It's like, let's catch it. I'm finding that a lot of people are going for those food sensitivity tests, and they're not getting someone professional to go over it with them. So they'll see they have a slight, maybe a very slight issue with egg whites. I can't eat egg whites anymore. And that's not really what it's saying. So I'm seeing a lot of that with people doing that. And over the years have seen that. I just had a friend DM me going, I can't eat egg whites. And that's why I thought of it. And I was like, well, what's the percentage? It's very low. So, you know, I'm seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, I've had also someone come into my office and print that out for me, send it to me and told me, these are all the things I can't eat. And there was so many things on there and I was like, okay, that's not true.
Yeah.
But I almost felt like for her, she wanted a reason to have things to restrict. So I also think that that's important that we recognize that sometimes people can hide behind, you know, a medical diagnosis, and they can hide their eating behind the fact that, oh, their doctor told me they can't have that. And then it becomes like extra complicated.
Yes.
Well, I think especially social media makes that so much worse because it's become almost trendy to have to exclude things from your diet. We talked about this a little bit, I think last week, where you get on social media and all of these wellness bloggers or people in the health space are saying, well, I can't eat this and this, or it might not even be somebody in the health space. It might be, I don't want to list any names, but it might be somebody who just claims that eggs make mono worse.
It could just be an
right?
influencer. Oh yeah, that happened. You could name, who was that? It was was it a doctor?
It's medical medium.
Oh, the milk. Yeah.
And I mean, it's
no, you're right. Great. You're right. It was him. Yeah.
But I find that it becomes like a sense of superiority for people. And I get it, right? I was in that place when I was super healthy, quote unquote healthy, where you almost feel like you've made it to the next level. If you're no longer worried about just what you're going to eat, now you get to advance and decide, oh, I can't eat that. Otherwise I might have a flare up in my gut. When in reality, that flare up in your gut is probably because you're stressed and
restricting your diet. You're restricting your diet. Like, honestly, when I was in college, I was a vegetarian and then I became vegan and I was a gluten-free vegan and I was praised for it as being healthy. I was miserable. I had nothing to eat. And that's so sad because that was like my first year as an RD. That's like, because here's the other thing, guys, like a lot of registered dietitians, they tend to get into it because they have their own disordered relationship with food. So, I mean, at the same, we are the experts and I'm not discrediting us. We really know our stuff. We also have to be mindful that, you know, we're human too. So there could be bias there. And I think that, you know, when I was in that stage, a lot of people were looking up to me, but like looking back, I like cringe because I was not being a good role model in the sense of just taking out. But I thought I was like killing it in this space.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Did you guys see Melissa Urban posted the other day where she had referenced something she would have said years ago about protein powders being bad. And if you're eating protein powder, you're just lazy and, you know, you're not cooking. And she came back to it and she was like, I would smack myself if I heard myself say that today. And it was so refreshing because Tony, I relate to that so much. I think so many dietitians could go back to their first couple of years and just cringe at the advice that we gave, thinking, of course, it was well-intentioned, but sometimes we get caught up in that as well. So I think there's definitely a learning curve for a lot of dietitians.
Which is also why when I did give anybody, and this is just like a little insight or whatever, but when I chose you guys, I was looking for at least 3 years experience. Like I didn't say that on the application because I was like, yeah, you never know, I didn't want to like dismiss that, but it really came pretty clear that I needed someone who like has been through all the things to really understand, like you have to take a non-biased approach. Otherwise you're not helping or serving anybody.
I totally agree with that. And I've always made that sort of my mantra is meeting people where they are. And, and I know I talk with vegans and they get very angry, like, how come you're not telling everyone to be vegan? And I'm meeting, some people actually like to eat meat and that's okay. If that's what they want to do, that's okay. And I said, I could get somebody who's eating a donut for breakfast and then they're eating, when we switch them to maybe banana oatmeal that has a little sugar in it, but now I upgraded them to whole grains. So, it's meeting people where they are and just working. And they always made that mantra, I don't care where you are. We're going to start from that point and move forward. You don't have to fit a certain curated IG
Yeah, like a fancy, your meal doesn't need to look so beautiful with the filters and
exactly.
all the things. I know, it's crazy. I'm like reflecting on all the things I did, but that's, we grow. At least we're honest about it,
And research changes. I think that's important too. I think
that's true.
when you're looking into any profession, really, we, especially today, if we view an inconsistent message as reason to ignore someone, and sometimes that's true, but also sometimes a changing message is reflection of changing research, right? I think probably, like non-nutritive sweeteners is a great example of this. 5 years, there just wasn't as much research on it. And so people were maybe more conservative, and now we have more research, and that's okay for professional opinions to change and to adapt as the information available does.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely.
That's so
And I
true.
always tell my clients, this is the information we have right now, and this is where we are right now. In the future it may change, but for now this is what we have, and it's a mix of, studies that are out now and also our professional opinions, and that is weighted too.
Yeah, that's such a good, I like that phrase. This is what we know right now. I like that. Might use that. So speaking of like kind of like what's trending, I think often what we hear is like something like vegan, for example, or doing, paleo or keto or whatever. And they're like, but it really is working for me. Like it really works for me. And I guess the bigger question is like, but like, is it? Like, how do we identify for someone, like, what does that mean it works for you? Like, you're losing weight? Is that your only parameter? Like, how would you guys suggest that we get people to be a little bit more introspective and really be honest with themselves? Like, is it actually working for them? Casey, maybe you give this a go to start, because I know that we were talking about this before.
This is a hard one. I have a client that I'm working with right now that actually is very similar. She went vegetarian vegan after getting high cholesterol, and she came to me and she was so excited because she's feeling better, she's sleeping better, but she was frustrated because she had lost muscle mass and gained fat mass. But she swore to me up and down that her labs had changed. And then I went and I looked at her labs, and they hadn't changed. They hadn't improved. And so I think that that's where that honesty with yourself comes in. And so instead of just telling her, I think a lot of people feel that there is a one size fits all and that you have to be vegan, you can't be vegan. But she was telling me she is sleeping better. She is feeling better. There had been great changes. And so I would say open yourself up to the idea that you can like certain aspects of how changing your diet has changed your life, but not others, right? And getting her to reconcile that there was some good, the increased energy, the improved sleep, but also some bad. She was losing muscle mass. She was gaining fat mass. She was, her triglycerides and cholesterol wasn't at all correcting. And so when you can approach it with a little bit more nuance and say, okay, maybe we don't need to completely go back to how you were eating before, but where can we get more protein into your diet? Where can we make sure we are getting carbohydrates from fiber-rich sources, from nutrient-rich sources, as opposed to just telling her, well, your veganism isn't working. Good luck with that, right? I think you have to let people be the decider, right? And she wanted to stay vegan. And so I think it's important to kind of address the nuance even in that and be realistic about some of this is good and some of it isn't. And then you can kind of address what was not going well while preserving what was.
And I think that the reason why people have a hard time being honest with themselves is because they are fearful. They might not know what to do. So it sounds like she may have been more clear on like she wanted to stay vegan no matter what. But some people I think feel like they need to identify because it makes it easier and it makes things black or white. Like it makes it like, I am a vegan. No, I will not have that. Like I've had a party or offered something, you know what I mean? Like, so I think that what I hope people, if you're listening, you are getting the sense that you don't have to put yourself in a box. You don't have to, you could have parts of the vegan diet. Eating more plant-based is going to benefit you. Like it's 100% going to benefit you, but you don't have to go completely that way in order for you to be quote unquote healthy, in order for you to achieve your goals or your results. Like there is a middle ground, and that is individualized to you. Your diet honestly shouldn't look like anybody else's. Like your diet should be individualized to you. So you don't have to stay in a hard box of vegan, vegetarian, or et cetera, et cetera. Like the only time I would say is like, if you have celiac, yes, you are gluten-free. Like if you have an allergy, like then yes, it's easier for you to identify as that. But for most of it, like you don't, I think people like just want it to, I don't know if it's like they want a sense of belonging or
I think that's big.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know if it's like a boundary setting. I think it's a combination of like, it's easier to set boundaries when you're very strict on like, I am this, and then people might respect that better. Or if it's like just wanting to feel like they belong. Cause I think as we get older, we lose that sense of community in some way. I don't
I
know.
think
I'm
in a
curious
sense
your
it's
thoughts.
easier, right? I think like when I think back to times in my life when I was doing Whole30 is a great example. I've done Whole30 before, and it was I was really sick with mono. I was exhausted all the time, and I liked that I just had something else to tell me what to eat, right? But that wasn't healthy, right? I mean, for months after Whole30, I had to convince myself that I could eat beans, right? Beans are so great for you. And so I think that we like taking the guesswork out. It does. It takes a lot of work to listen to your body and to honor that. It's constant communication, constant dialogue. And if you haven't done that work of healing your relationship with food, that might feel impossible. And so I think that's a big part. But everything you said, Tony, plays a role. The community's big. All of it plays into it.
Such a good point. Such a good point. Mary Rose, anything you could add to like what someone can do to really ask themselves, like, is this actually working for me versus what they perceive it to be?
I guess it goes back to that question we were talking about, is how do you define healthy? Is healthy just aesthetics and how you look, and assuming that I am thin and I look great, so I'm healthy. But then you also see that all the time where they gain some weight. You'll have somebody do a before and after, and they were very slim, and people probably idolize them. And then they'll show a picture where they're more at a normal weight and say, I feel fabulous now. I didn't feel fabulous then, so you have to really define what healthy is. But I feel that people need to label. We're a label obsessed nation, and we have to label everything. And, labeling yourself a vegan is okay, but you want to be the best vegan you can be. And it takes work, it's not just like I won't eat. It's like my body needs zinc, my body needs omega-3s. I need to eat a variety of foods. So I think that they need to just really zero in on, it's holistic. It's not only how you look and how you feel and what your blood work is, or do you have the energy to hang out with your friends or run after your kid? Are you exhausted at the end of the day? Are you losing nutrients and you're not getting what your body needs for that quality of life that you want? So it's, healthy has a lot of different nuances. I love that word, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to add, we keep using vegan because I use my vegan client as an example, but this is any diet, right? This is vegan, paleo, Whole30,
keto,
anything that you're doing. Give yourself the flexibility to not fit into that box. It kind of blows my mind with how far personalized nutrition has come and is going. And people are loving that, right? Think about, just like you said, Mary Rose, the at-home tests that people are paying for, the microbiome, the GI maps that people are doing, that we, on one hand, are recognizing the kind of capacity, the potential for personalized nutrition, while also not fully ready to get rid of this one size fits all diet culture. And so it's interesting, I think, in this world that both exist in nutrition, I think it's causing a lot of friction for a lot of people. It's confusing.
Yeah, definitely. Yet what I find so ironic is, even though things are being advertised as more individualized plan, those things are like what they come 100%. Back and spit out like, oh, then do this. Okay. Like, I didn't know that when I have high cholesterol, I need to increase my fiber. Thank you. I don't know. I don't know. That's why I felt the need to kind of expand and because one-on-one coaching, I think, is so necessary. But it's the reason why, just so you guys know, like those who are listening, like the reason why, like, I don't want to get like names, but like basically like these MLM companies, like these bigger companies have such a bigger outreach, is because they do less work. they literally are making one size fits all approaches that are not meeting people where they need. And it's like, because it's literally impossible. We don't have the energy as humans to pour into somebody. You know, we have a capacity. So instead they're thinking dollar signs. They're thinking, I want to make more money. They're not thinking I want to make more impact, although that's what they say. It's a complete lie. You know, so with individualized care, like we have limits, but we're creating containers to help people get there. So that's really why I had you guys on, because I knew that I couldn't help everyone, right? We can't do this alone. But at the same time, I didn't want to go and transition to like creating a product or like a one size like fits all approach, because it doesn't exist. We need people helping people. That's literally what we need, you know? So I'm super excited. All right. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. We're like, I feel like we could talk for hours. So we'll definitely have you guys back on. And anybody listening, if you have specific questions for us, if you have a question, I feel like this would be a good platform for us to answer questions. So email me your questions to tipswithtony@gmail.com. Let me know your feedback from this episode, and we will definitely record again. But before we kind of wrap up, Mary Rose, Casey, any last minute comments, things you feel like the need to share with the listeners?
I would say, you know, nutrition shouldn't be stressful. Your diet shouldn't be stressing you out. Okay. It's balance. It's open. I like Tony's approach. You know, all foods are important, not labeling them, but not making your diet stressful.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I would say it's easy for 3RDs with years and years of experience to come on and, you know, kind of demystify a lot of these things. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. They're right. Of course, this one size diet doesn't fit all. You're not an idiot. It's so difficult. There are trillions of dollars of marketing put into you believing what you believe about nutrition. So don't be so hard on yourself or maybe embarrassed about where you are that you don't seek help. You know, feel encouraged and empowered to say, oh yeah, I don't know as much about this as somebody who has gone to, you know, multiple degrees in nutrition to do this, and just be okay with not having all the answers.
Yeah. And we're not meant to, you know, like
we don't have all the answers.
We don't have all the answers. Like we're experts in our field, but that's why we do what we do, to help other people. But like when we need help in other areas, we hire that help. I don't know why there's so much shame. I guess because you would think in our nature, we should, quote unquote, should know how to eat, because we're mammals and most animals just know how to eat, but we're also humans and we have brains, and we live in a world where we're just overwhelmed with a large amount of ridiculous messages. So you're not alone. But if you're listening and you want our help, I'm so excited to announce that Mary Rose and Casey are taking on new clients right now. For those who are wondering if I'm involved in the process, I still am. We do the discovery call together. You do your first call with me. We have a midway call in the middle of the 6 months, and you get your final call with me. You have messaging with me, but the cool part is you're getting 2 dietitians for the price of 1. That's like the best part of it. It allows to get extra eyes on things. And it's just so helpful. And now we can reach more people with having more RDs on the team. So if you're interested in working with us, go to www.tipswithtony.com/coaching. There's a video about the program. Watch that video. And then if anything there resonates with you, fill out the application below it. Once you fill out the application, you will get prompted to schedule your discovery call. And then from there, you do the hardest part. And the hardest part, like Casey said, is reaching out for help. That is it. There's no shame here. There's no guilt there. We are here for you. We're excited for you. The time is now. Time is precious. If you've been struggling for the past few years, just know that in 6 months, you can heal that and really achieve that food freedom, that balance that we all just described in this podcast, that it sounds like we so naturally talk about, but we struggled with it too. But it's helpful. So go to www.tipswithtony.com/coaching to apply today, so you have the chance to work with one of us. So I'm super excited. Thank you guys for being here. I meant to say, share maybe where they can find you. I know you're still working on getting on social a little bit more, but maybe share some of your handles if you want people to connect with you, if they want to connect with you directly.
I'm on Instagram at Mary Rose and Time, THYME. And I'm
always the best handle. And I am at kb.rd.nutrition. So Casey Benavides, let's be and RD is in registered dietitian.
That's your new last name, right?
New last name.
Just got married. We're excited for her. So I'll put that in the show notes. You guys can find me on Instagram as well at tips_with_Tony with an I, or the Tips with Tony podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, anything resonated with you, take a screenshot of it, share it on your story, tag me, tag Mary Rose, tag Casey, tag us, let people know what you got from it, or share it with a friend. We just want to spread the love and spread this message because we're super passionate about it. If you couldn't tell from the beginning, our excitement was like all the way up there. We're still excited closing out the show. All right. So anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. As always, I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.